What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from ActionMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today we're going to talk about In the Lost Lands. I made that feel way more dramatic than it needed to be, but click like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, join me on my cult following here on YouTube, and where I talk about movies from the blind perspective, oftentimes movies that have audio description, like this one does. This has an audio description track. And other critics claim that they go into things blind. I put all my chips in. I actually go into everything blind all the time. Doesn't really matter what it is. I went into it blind. So I went into this blind. It was amazing. I didn't really go anywhere. I just kind of watched this on my TV, but I still went into it blind. And yeah, I didn't know what it was about, but it was a film from 2025, and you guys need your reviews. You're so demanding, so needy. If you've ever wondered what it would be like if Paul W.S. Anderson had gotten a hold of the Game of Thrones franchise, this is what would have happened. This is adapted from a short by George R.R. Martin and made into a movie. So this is it. And it stars, of course, Milla Jovovich, because it's a Paul W.S. Anderson movie. So of course she's in it. The funny thing is that I actually didn't know who directed it, but I could tell before the movie was over, before we rolled credits at the end. And then I was like, well, it's a Milla Jovovich movie. It's probably Paul W.S. Anderson. And then lo and behold, they're like directed by Paul. I was like, of course it is. Of course it is. I didn't even IMDb it. I was like, I'm sure it'll come to me at the end of the movie. It'll let me know that I'm right. It'll validate me. Yeah, and I was like, yeah, it feels like the kind of stuff that he does. He's also brought along Dave Bautista for this, who I think got confused and thought this was Dune, and then just wandered onto the set, and then just did his Dune thing. I don't know. And a bunch of people that I honestly just don't know. Like the downstream cast, not important. Milla Jovovich plays Grey Alice, which sounds like a ridiculous name, but it also sounds like she has to play characters named Alice. So they're making very clear that she's Grey Alice. She's not Alice. This is Grey Alice. It's very different. So remember, make a note. Write that down for yourself. Jot it down. Grey Alice and Alice, not the same person. So don't get your Resident Evil mix-ups in here. I don't know. She's like a witch. The film is very honest. I don't know. George R.R. Martin, when you see what he writes, the text, the books, the size, the depth, it's very detailed. So for whatever he did to be condensed into an hour and 40-minute movie, I did feel confused. Even with audio description, I felt like we were just sort of like spinning in circles and pretending like we could see everything. You know, like we're just going around and being like, I don't know what's happening. Fuck it. I don't know, she's a witch, and there are these priests, and they don't like her because she's a witch, and she also has the ability to like invade the minds of some of them, but not all of them. It's not really doesn't really go into hardcore like why some and not others. Some of it's used pretty interestingly in terms of what she can make them see and do. The beginning sequence where like one of the guards who's in charge of like while she's being strung up, where he sort of like sees himself in her shoes, and then he's not really there, and then he shoots at her, but he ends up shooting at himself. Like that whole thing not only was cool, but it's also a little confusing. But it's not like we keep seeing that power being used repetitively throughout the whole movie. It's not like that's not her one thing that she does is like confound people to death. So cool, but anyway, so she wants to escape the city, and she needs like a guide to take her through the Lost Lands. or into the Lost Lands, as it were. And that's where Bautista comes in. He plays, I don't know, he's got one of those like cool in a sci-fi movie, like Kane or uh, something like that is his name. And you can tell I'm so enthused by this movie. Um, and so his skill set is, he's like, you don't even know what you want. You don't know what you're asking for, the Lost Lands. You don't know what's out there. You're just from the city. You've never been out there. It'll kill you. Listen, dude, the name of the movie is called In the Lost Lands. We have to go into the Lost Lands at some point. Unless we just... If it was about things coming out of the Lost Lands, I'm sure it would be called Out of the Lost Lands. If there were creatures that were attacking us. We're gonna have to make this journey, bro. Let's do it. So, yeah, they're gonna make a journey. And she doesn't really trust him. They have trust issues. It's okay. They'll work it out. And eventually, now we get all these other side characters come in. There's a plot that they like to use sometimes that you sort of have to pay attention to. There's the random introduction of werewolves, and then they don't really talk about it for a while. Like, this isn't like really like a strong werewolf movie. There just are werewolves. But then it becomes like a plot point later on. Like, they're like, oh my god, werewolves are back. And then you're like, oh wow, this is really important to the plot. I should have paid more attention to the many werewolves that have not been in this movie up until this point. It's one of those films, it feels like a kitchen sink movie where it's like a sci-fi movie where they throw everything into it and then stir it around and then you get all this stuff. Also, it's full of all this acting where people have no idea where the rise and fall of what it is that they're saying is. So it's kind of hilarious. This movie is like waiting for people to like make little clips out of it, of people who are just like having a normal conversation and they're just talking and then they just start shouting for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Just like out of nowhere. Like it's like, why are you shouting that? Like, it's just odd choices. And I feel like, I know we've beleaguered this part about Paul W.S. Anderson and him being a director and whether or not he's a good director. And some people do like a few of his things. Event Horizon has turned out to have a really strong cult following all these years later. So maybe there's something there. But he's stuck in this sort of... It also felt like if it wasn't going to be Paul W.S. Anderson, and he may have directed this bullshit movie too, but I don't know if anybody remembers Ultraviolet. It felt like it could have been directed by whoever directed that. It's very sort of like disjointed at times. It feels like it's shiny, pretty, like that kind of thing. Like, look at us, look at what we're doing. Isn't this cool? And it's like, but what are you doing? What is the story here? What is the point of any of this? Like, I didn't really grab onto the stakes. I didn't understand, like, why Grey Alice was so dangerous to begin. She just is dangerous at the beginning. Just pointing to somebody and being like, fire, don't touch it. You know, like, that's what it is. And you're like, all right. But then she's also the lead of the movie. So it's like, well... Is she dangerous, or is she right and everybody else is evil? And if so, why? What's the systematic problems that have occurred for thousands of years that have led to her being the one to stand up for, you know, against tyranny? How does Dave Bautista factor into this in a way that's not incredibly stupid? Oh, no, we're going to go the incredibly stupid. Okay, got it. He opens up the beginning of the movie where he walks into frame and he's got these like scars, like gashes on him, and he's like, "Do you want to hear a story?" I'm like, "Oh, this is the worst way to open a movie." just from that moment, I was like, "Oh no." I had some hopes for this movie. I thought it was going to be maybe because I don't mind cheesy sci-fi movies. I grew up in the age of Michael Bay, and I love Armageddon. I do. It's so cheesy, but it's great cheesy. It's the right kind of cheesy. It just, I don't know, it just makes you feel good about yourself by the end of the movie. And Paul W.S. Anderson, Mortal Kombat, Event Horizon, there's some movies in there that I like to rewatch over and over. So there's stuff here that it could have been, In the Lost Lands could have just been this underrated gem from this year that just nobody's really paying that much attention to because it just flew under the radar. And then it turns out nobody's paying attention to it because there's not really anything here that feels good. This feels like they want to bury it so somebody else can come along later on and do George R.R. Martin justice. You know, like HBO is mining all of the Martin content to try to expand the Game of Thrones franchise. So why not turn this into a limited series, you know? What is it about this content that somebody who's a better writer and a better filmmaker couldn't turn into the next House of the Dragon or Night of the Seven Oceans or whatever the next series is called? I should know that, but I don't. This just kind of limps forward. It's not astoundingly bad compared to some of the films this year, but it is disappointingly bad. So it's the kind of thing where you're like, well, there's something here, but it needed to be filtered through a director of different talents than Anderson. We needed somebody who could actually understand this. This is not like one of those films, one of those plots, one of those like completely inescapable ideas that nobody could ever touch and adapt. It's not unadaptable. It's just, we have to, Paul W.S. Anderson on this doesn't make any sense. The hour 40-minute runtime makes it feel like the thing is condensed, and the closest comp that I can give you is Borderlands, which is not a good comp. If I was to be like, if you liked Borderlands, you'll like In the Lost Lands. So no one's gonna like this. I think I even like Borderlands more than this because some of the acting performances were sort of fun. Yeah, this is disappointing. I would go, yes. The audio description though is nice. It's actually pretty nice. I don't recognize the voice. The problem is that the voice is so clean and so like I didn't recognize it at all. It feels like one of those sort of AI voices that we get to like narrate us on things, but also there's no ducking here. I didn't catch any audio ducking, which is a huge sign of text-to-speech AI voices. So I'm going to say this wasn't that, and this is just a guy who has a very clean sound, his voice, a sort of generic almost, but is very well written, and I just don't know who the narrator is. So, but yeah, the audio description tried to give me as much as humanly possible, as much of this fantasy description as possible, and I really appreciated it because without it, this movie would be ungodly. So hard to follow. It already is kind of a mess because it feels like something that's supposed to be longer than this. I know we talk a lot about like shitty movies shouldn't be longer, but sometimes if you make them longer, what you end up doing is giving coherence to the plot and the story. So I would have probably wanted to see a 2-hour cut before saying, oh no, it's impossible for this movie to ever be good. Because it might have just needed an extra 15 minutes to flesh the story out, to flesh the characters out, to make things make sense. However, if I give Paul W.S. Anderson an extra 15 minutes and he just shoots another action sequence, no. You know, he needs... This film actually lacks exposition, which is so weird because I never find myself going, can I have more exposition, please? But I felt like I didn't know anything about this world that they were in, and I was just supposed to take everything at face value. So it's an odd duck of a movie, and I can see why it just kind of did nothing at the box office. Um, I'm gonna give In the Lost Lands a C-. I think there's a better cut of this, but sadly, we got this cut instead. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys not in the Lost Lands.